And it is showtime. Welcome to No Huddle Necessary. I am your host, Jeff Barnes, and if you've been waiting long enough, the wait is almost over. Tomorrow night, we have NFL football for real. No preseason, no training camp. This is straight week one action. You're going to have the world champs, the Chiefs, taking on the Texans in Kansas City. And I believe there's supposed to be some fans in attendance. So if you've been waiting for football, it's here. And this show today is all about kicking off the NFL season. So we're not going to talk college today. All four of our topics are NFL related. And we're going to get you ready for the season that many people didn't think was going to happen. So we're going to be light one panelist today. So it's just going to be two panelists competing for some FaceTime. So without further ado, let me start to bring them in. All right. Talking up the first is once again another college football guru like myself. We sit there, we love the draft. This man is what I call a football savant. Okay, we're talking about Mr. Bill Carroll. Bill, how are you? Bill, check it. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you. While Bill gets his audio together, we're going to bring in, of course, the man with the most famous name when it comes to nuts and bolts sports. We're talking about Keith Richards. Keith, how are you?
Oh, no, I was on mute. He was on mute, but I hope I look better than he does. Because
it is a pleasure to be where we are now. We've come a long way. I've been doing a whole series of videos dealing with the tribulations of COVID.
And
well, then maybe I am. I don't know. Let me check. I'm not unmuted on my end.
Seems Bill's having audio trip. It's on delay. Are you there now, Bill? All right. Well, we're going to try and soldier on while Bill gets settled. What were you saying, Keith? Before
I was gonna say, I hope I look better than that Keith Richards. I don't know how that man's still alive.
That is the medical marvel of Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. While many people have passed on, Keith Richards continues to soldier on. How? Don't know. He partied hard all his life, so go figure. And he still plays guitar way better than I do.
One thing I wish I had done very well. I tried so hard to be good at guitar, and I just was not.
You tell me. You tell me. I don't see a problem on my end, but I'll take your word for it.
All right. Gotcha. All right. So with that being said, we're going to get started. We'll go on the first quarter, and let's get started, folks. The people are waiting.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right. So, first quarter question. Tomorrow night's the kickoff game, folks. So, let's talk about it. We got the Texans. We got the Chiefs. The champs, Mahomes, You know, you know the deal. I don't have to tell you any more about this. We got Deshaun with his brand new contract. You guys know the deal. So let's talk about it. Okay. Who you got for tomorrow night? I want to know, at this point, you sell me on who's going to win the big one tomorrow night. We're going to start this off with Bill. So, Bill, why don't you get us started?
I think the Texans are going to come out very fast. Game that Deshaun Watson's going to not get knocked around too much, which is really around. They're going to win a lot of football games. And I think they're going to win this shootout that most people are 31, 27, that kind of thing, as opposed to how little football these teams have played since the last Super Bowl. We've had no preseason, and even the teams that have had a lot of continuity, they haven't been able to sync up as much because you're not going full go. There's not been as much 11 on 11 as normal. There hasn't been, some of those competitive, multi-squad, like, two teams going against it in terms of scrimmages, and obviously no preseason. So I think both offenses will be a little less explosive than they'll be later in the year, but I think the Texans are going to find a way to squeeze this one out. But I think later, just like last time, I think the Chiefs will later prevail when it counts.
Gotcha. So you're telling me it's going to be a repeat of what we saw last year. We saw a 24-0, and all of a sudden, Mahomes and the magic happened. It's a different Texans team, though. I think
the Texans win this game, but they'll lose to them in the playoffs again. That's what I was saying.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it was going to be a repeat of what we saw last year.
No.
Lead, confidence flaring up, and then all of a sudden somebody lets the air out of the balloon. I thought that's what you were saying was going to happen this time. So you're telling me they're going to win this one. They're pulling the upset.
They're going to win. They're going to win this game. I think they're going to win this game by 4 points, but they'll lose to them again in the playoffs. But they're going to win this game.
Okay. Very well. Mr. Richards, your turn. Tell us how you feel.
I don't have as much confidence in the Texans that Bill does. I don't think they're going to be a terrible team. I'm picking the Chiefs to win this one. The Chiefs really didn't change much from last season. The biggest glaring absences are Rashad Breeland, who has a 4-game suspension, and Damian Williams, who opted out due to COVID-19. But they seem to have replaced Damian Williams fine with the running back they drafted, and they have pretty much everyone else returning. Frank Clark, Tyrann Mathieu, can't think of the other guy. On the defensive line, I think his name is Chris Jones. Yeah, that's it. I think it's going to be slow going in the first game or two for the Texans because DeAndre Hopkins is a huge player for you to be missing from your roster. They still are good enough that they can replace him in production, mainly with the running game, but they're going to miss him down deep in the field in late game situations for sure. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this one.
All right. So we got one for the Chiefs. We got one for the Texans. Now, here's what I got. Here's the big question. With no training camp, what do you think the first half of this game is going to look like? And honestly, we've seen week 1 games with the full training camp, and there's been some sloppy football to start. How bad do you expect it to be in the first half of this game?
So what's the equivalent of 3 p.m. in LA Fitness for a football team? That's what it's going to look like.
You know how if you have a child in your life and they bring home something they finger painted from preschool and you praise them, it's like, oh, we're going to be so happy to see football. We're going to have the the parent of a 4-year-old reaction. We're going to say, oh, this is beautiful. We love it. But, it's finger paint. There's going to be some ugly football. And especially the teams that really count on timing and precision. When the timing and precision isn't there, you're going to see interceptions that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. And you're going to see, guys running the same route together at the same depth, looking at each other like, what are you doing here? There's these things that just aren't supposed to happen are going to happen. Some good teams are going to look bad. Some bad teams are going to look good. The first 2 weeks are going to be kind of, but I think by about week 3, we'll say, oh, okay, this is kind of what we were expecting to see. So look for some, if you like betting, bet a lot of underdogs the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, part of the reason I picked the Chiefs is because there are going to be a lot of breakdowns and offense and defense and play calling and defensive coverages. When breakdowns happen, it's when the playmakers make the big plays. And few, if any, teams in the NFL have more playmakers than the Kansas City Chiefs do. I mean, you just need to give Tyreek Hill a half a second and he's gone. So I just think that that's an advantage for them. Timing is going to be an issue for them as well, but I think they just have the skill to win out in a sloppy situation.
Well, I'll tell you what. If the last couple of weeks of opening college football was a little shaky, I could imagine what we're going to see this weekend. And this is going to be a long 5 days of football for me. High schools down here in Florida start this week with our games. So I'll be at a JV game tomorrow night, and then a varsity game I'll be coaching on Friday, in college Saturday, and NFL Sunday and Monday. So by all means, it's going to be a long weekend of football for me, and I expect a lot of sloppy football. So it's going to be real interesting, to say the least. I've been around this game too long to know that you just don't put the pads on and everything looks hunky-dory. There's going to be some bad exchanges. There's going to be some bad meshes with running backs. There's going to be some blown coverages that are just plain ugly, and everybody's going to wonder, how the heck did this guy get open? So I can imagine.
Missed extra points.
Yeah. Blocked extra points. Blocked extra points.
Blocked extra points.
A lot of finger pointing on the
kickoffs out of bounds, all that stuff. Yes, if you like bad football, I have good news for you.
This is going to be the week where you're going to see those teammates pointing at each other and arguing. That was your man you were supposed to block. That was your man you were supposed to cover. This is that week. All right. So with that being said, let's move on. I think we've beat up these two teams enough. Let's move on. All right. So second quarter question. We've got to preview the AFC South last week. The AFC South last week. So we're going to throw in a couple other divisions to preview this week. So let's start with the NFC South. All right. So here you have, of course, we know Tom Brady and everybody else they could find to throw into that team came over to the Buccaneers. They open up with the Saints. We all know there's a new sheriff in town in Carolina. And then, of course, don't forget that team in Atlanta. They just changed their uniforms. So with that being said, you guys are going to sell me on your outlook for this division. All right, so Bill started us off last time, right? So, So Keith, your turn. Start us off.
Let's be realistic here. The Panthers and the Falcons don't have a chance of winning this division. They're not even worth discussing right now. I think really it boils down to the Saints and the Buccaneers. For all intents and purposes, they are two teams that are extremely loaded. I mean, everyone knows what happens with the Bucs this offseason. They got Tom Brady. They got Rob Gronkowski. Just a couple days ago, they picked up Leonard Fournette, meaning they have a backfield of Leonard Fournette, LaShawn McCoy, and Ronald Jones II. They also picked up Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul. The thing I think would be the concern for them is they have a lot of good players, but they have a lot of players that are either past their prime or exiting their prime. So it's really going to be a matter of if they can stay healthy for a full season and get the production that they think they're going to get out of those players. When you go to the Saints, you got Drew Brees returning. Taysom Hill's returning as well. They gave him a huge contract. Jameis Winston is a backup quarterback that can fill in if Drew Brees gets hurt because he's another old guy as well. Alvin Kamara, sounds like they're going to work it out with him. The biggest add for them in the offseason was Emmanuel Sanders to line up with Michael Thomas. The Saints are pretty much the same as they were last year. I give them the slight advantage just because they have that chemistry, that continuity that the Buccaneers don't have. I would say 51-49, the Saints are going to win the division. What kind of hurts the Saints is their last 4 games, they have the Eagles, Kansas City, the Vikings, and Carolina. As opposed to the Buccaneers, their last 4 games, they have Minnesota, the Falcons twice, and the Lions. So if the Saints can build up a pretty good lead in the beginning of the season, they should easily win the division, I think. But if it comes down to the last 4 games, the Buccaneers might overtake them.
Wow, you got no love for the Falcons or the Panthers, huh? New coach
Who's
staff
quarterback
Carolina.
for the Saints or for the Falcons? Is that Matt Ryan?
Yeah.
Moving on.
Listen, I have never been a huge Matt Ryan fan, so I won't debate you on that one. I'll admit, but Todd Gurley helps that situation a lot.
He does, but Matt Ryan's still quarterback, so it doesn't matter.
Bill, your turn.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with certain things that were said. I think that the Saints will end up a little bit above the Buccaneers. Where I 100% disagree is I don't think the Falcons are going to be a non-entity. I think the Falcons are actually going to win that division, though I think it's going to be very tightly bunched. I think the top 3 teams may literally only be 1 game apart. I think you may end up with an actual tie with the top 2 teams in terms of their records, and the head-to-head being the thing that decides it. I think you could have 2 11-5 or 2 12-4 teams with a 10-6 team or 11-5 team right behind them. It's going to be very tight at the top, but I think actually the Falcons end up on top of that heap. It's easy to dismiss the Falcons, one, because they were very bad last year, but they were bad. They weren't bad in the way they got beaten. They lost a lot of extremely close games. In some games, they frankly had no business losing. They found ways to lose. Could that happen again this year? It could. I don't think it will. I think Dan Quinn ends up being coach of the year. I think you're going to see that team turn it around big time. I think a lot of the games that they lost last year, they will not lose. I think some of the injuries that they had last year, they won't have again this year. And most importantly, they're going to be much better on defense. Not that Matt Ryan won't stop being Matt Ryan. I think they're not going to go very deep in the playoffs, but I think they will end up on top of that division. And like I said, mark my words, that is going to be a dramatically better defense. Maybe not a top 3 or 4 defense, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were a top 7 to 9 defense.
So, and I'm going to bring Keith in as well. I got a couple of questions for you guys about this division before we turn the page on it. Let's start with the team everybody seems to love right now. You know, this is the popular bandwagon team, Tampa Bay. You know, we know about Brady, we know about Gronk, we know about go on and on about all the guys they added. Yeah. Okay. So, does this team not remind you of when Favre came over to Minnesota? All right. So, is this going to be that team that they load up and they have 1 year to get this right before guys get old on them? Do y'all agree with that, or is it just?
I would say they're even more of that Vikings team than our Vikings team was. I mean, Brett Favre, when he came to Minnesota, he didn't have Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, or Ronald Jones II. I mean, he had Adrian Peterson, but he didn't have all those other weapons that Tom Brady is going to have. The issue is, again, I have to clarify, I think Tom Brady is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but he is getting old. His play has diminished in the last 2 or 3 seasons. So you put him in a situation to where it's an offense that he hasn't run for the past 20 years, and there's going to be some growing pains. If it was this same Buccaneers team in their second season, I would pick them over anyone in that division, no problem. But they're just not going to be able to get it together to be able to win that division that quickly.
My main issue with the Buccaneers is they have Ryan Jensen. Look at the interior of their offensive line. They have Ryan Jensen and Ali Marpet. Marpet's very good. Jensen is good. But look at the depth behind them. They better pray and hope that neither of those guys gets hurt. Because what's Tom Brady's kryptonite? We can all say it together. Interior pressure. If either Ryan Jensen or Ali Marpet gets hurt, you're going to see a very human version of Tom Brady, not the GOAT version of Tom Brady. Because, I mean, no quarterback likes interior pressure, but nobody hates it more than Tom Brady. And they do not have a great offensive line. Tristan Wirfs is a very talented but raw player at right tackle. Really study that Tampa Bay offensive line. They have a couple of good pieces, but no depth. Anybody gets hurt, they're going to be in struggle city.
All right. So let's talk about another team in that division that we really didn't dig our hands into, and that's Carolina. So Matt Rule comes in. Of course, he has a brand new quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. Okay, he's got that 1,000 man in the backfield in Christian McCaffrey. He's got a bunch of young receivers, retooled his defense. So can they sneak up on anybody in that division?
When you say sneak up, I mean, I think they're going to be better than some people might expect, but the top 3 teams are so good. I mean, they're clearly number 4, and I don't think they'll be 4-12, but 6-10. I mean, maybe even 7-9 if they get some breaks and can once again stay healthy. I mean, I love Teddy Bridgewater, but he's not exactly a paragon of health going. If you look through his career, and once again, I'm a huge McCaffrey fan, but he's going to, he might lead the league. He's going to lead the league in touches. I don't say might. I'm just going to go out and predict he's going to lead the league in touches. They better hope, obviously, he doesn't get hurt. Because there's a huge drop-off. You talk about drop-offs from the first guy to the second. They don't have another one of him. Like, he's the only one of them they have. He's their best receiver. He's their best running back. But with a fair amount of space between him and the person behind him. I think DJ Moore is going to continue to improve. But he's essentially a number 2 receiver on a team where the number 1 receiver is your number 1 running back. You don't just replace a guy like Greg Olsen. I mean, there's some things on that team that I like, but they're clearly there's some space between them and the other 3 teams.
Okay. How about you, Keith?
Yeah, I think for sure if there's anyone who's a game changer, it's Christian McCaffrey. They added Robbie Anderson as well to be able to stretch the field, maybe take some pressure off of Christian McCaffrey. The thing that worries me about McCaffrey is, I mean, he's a young, strong guy, but his usage is just so high that you're just begging for him to blow an ACL or tear an Achilles or have nagging hamstring injuries. I mean, like Bill said, if they lose McCaffrey, team is done for. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater might be a little bit better than what they had last season. Is he so much better that he can help take some of that pressure off Christian McCaffrey? I don't think so.
All right. Fair enough. I think this division, unfortunately, we know the loading up Tampa Bay did. We know how good the Saints have been. And Atlanta is a very good team. And I think the addition of Gurley is going to help them immensely if he's healthy. See, that's the problem I have with Todd Gurley is he's already sitting out and missing time because they're trying to preserve him. So we don't know what Todd Gurley you're going to see the first half of the season, if he's going to be healthy, if he's going to last the season. And that doesn't help Matt Ryan at all. It doesn't help Julio at all. It sure as heck doesn't help Ridley at all either. So with that being said, I think this is going to be a really interesting thing. I think the addition of Hayden Hurst definitely helps. Yeah, it's going to be one of those divisions. Everybody's going to have the favorites in that division on top. And if somebody shocks them with a stretch where they come out with a nice run, that being the Falcons or the Panthers, where they jump into that race for the division, by all means, that's going to make it even more exciting. I think they need as much excitement because right now they're already crowning Tampa Bay. And
Well,
with that,
remember, we just talked about. Remember when the Eagles had a quote unquote dream team, as Vince Young
Mhm.
crowned them. I mean, this rarely works out how people think it will when a team brings together a bunch of slightly over the hill free agents, but guys with a lot of skins on the wall in terms of their past careers, and people just sort of assume it's all going to click. It doesn't usually work that way.
that's true. Except for George Allen. George Allen seemed to make it work.
Well, I mean, I did sort of an informal study. I think, if memory serves it correctly, something like 61% of the snaps on that over the hill gang team that unfortunately got chewed up by the dynastic Dolphins. But that quote unquote over the hill gang, 61% of the snaps on offense and defense was taken by guys that came either via trade or free agency. And free agency in those days meant cast-offs because it wasn't true free agency. If you were a free agent in those days, it meant the team that had you
didn't want you
done.
Yeah,
right. They thought you were shot. Right. They thought you were shot. So I think you'll never see, especially when you think that was in the era of sort of non-free agency and there was no salary cap. So teams kept all their best players. Yeah. And he managed to cobble together a team of free agents. So it's sort of interesting to see, and then once again, aging free agents at that. But it doesn't usually work. That's the whole point. We're talking about this because that's the only time it really worked out, where a team could have slapped together a bunch of aging free agents and made it all the way to the Super Bowl. It doesn't usually happen.
That's true. And with that being said, we're going to jump divisions real quick. So let's move on to third quarter. All right, so we talked about the NFC South. Last week we talked about the AFC South. Let's talk about the AFC North. All right, so last year it was the Ravens that took the division. A little uncharacteristic because usually the Steelers and the Ravens that fought it out, and somehow Pittsburgh has come back to take it most of the last few years. Cleveland was supposed to be a favorite last year and disappointed. And then there was Cincinnati. So with that being said, and we're going to go back to Keith, starting us off this time. Tell me your outlook for the AFC North.
Let me just end all suspense and just say outright, the Ravens are going to win the division again. But that being said, I don't think they're going to steamroll the division the way that they did last year. And really it starts with the Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger being back. I don't expect him to be Super Bowl winning Ben Roethlisberger, but he's going to be better than what Mason Rudolph and that other guy, whose name I don't even remember, was last year. James Conner should be back. Their big issue on offense is going to be they got to get Juju Smith-Schuster to play a lot better than he did last year. I think he will because we've seen him have that great connection with Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know if I would be willing to put money on the Steelers winning that division, but I think they're going to give the Ravens a lot more of a challenge than the Ravens had last year. And then you have the Cleveland Browns. Not a whole lot changed with them. I mean, they still have Baker Mayfield. They still have Nick Chubb. They added Kareem Hunt. Say what you will about him. Really, at this point, I think it's a make-or-break year for Baker Mayfield. I mean, either he's going to have a good season or they're going to have to look for someone else. They can't continue to waste time waiting on him to be this great quarterback that, in my opinion, he was never going to be in the first place. And then, like you said, then there's the Bengals. No one expects a whole lot out of the Bengals this season. Joe Burrow is their quarterback. They do have A.J. Green coming back. Tyler Boyd will still be there. John Ross III is going to need to put up more production than he did the season before. I think at this point their idea or their hope is just to get Joe Burrow out of the season healthy so that they can draft better players or sign better players and continue to build the success that they had and being able to draft Joe Burrow, if you want to call that success, because they were terrible. But they have a good start with Joe Burrow. They just got to get him through the year and get him some more players. But without question, the Ravens will win this division again.
All right. Mr. Bill, your turn.
Well, I do have to agree. I think the Ravens are the class of the division. I think they'll be swapping paint with Pittsburgh all the way throughout. Once again, it's another situations where the records could be one game separating them, or even the same record, but head-to-head might be the deciding factor. I think the Browns will be better this year, perhaps even much better. They'll be better on defense and on offense. And, I mean, it's sort of unfair to take shots at Baker Mayfield. As a rookie on a bad team with terrible coaching, he set basically all the rookie passing records, right? And so when the team completely fell apart, they somehow got worse coaching, which I didn't think was possible. You know, it's like you think when you fire Hugh Jackson, there's no place to go but up. But no, they managed to actually have a worse coaching situation after firing Hugh Jackson. Believe in yourself, right? Show what you can do. That's what the people say it can't be done. But they're in a better situation. Kevin Stefanski is going to help Baker Mayfield to go back to looking like one of the better quarterbacks, but in the AFC. Maybe not top 5, maybe not top 8, but top 10, I think you book it. I mean, he's going to be back to a guy with about a 2.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, about 3,800 yards passing, probably about a 65.5, almost 66% completion percentage. If you look at him from high school onward, he's been extremely accurate. He's usually a good decision maker, but he can sometimes get stuck, like a lot of young quarterbacks, on his primary, on his first read. But Stefanski's going to work on that. They're going to get him to move his eyes more quickly, which he was actually doing as a rookie, and he slowed down, partially because he was trying to really feed the ball to OBJ. He's going to snap him out of that. I think you're going to see the ball go back to moving around and being spread around like it was, especially for the running backs. I think both Hunt and Chubb are going to be heavily involved in the passing game, including seeing some 21 personnel. You're going to see some two-back offense out of them, and sometimes they'll be in a two-back set, and they'll send them both out into the slots, go double slots, and now they're 4 wide or 5 wide, where once they looked like they were in a power run set. Stefanski's a good structural planner in terms of what he does on offense. I'm not completely sold on him as an actual play caller, but I love him as a play designer. He's a very good play designer. So you're going to see some real growth in that offense. So those who are worried about or taking shots at Baker Mayfield, you'll be eating some of those words. He's about to look much better. They're going to be better on defense as well. My real concern, once again, is health, like it is for a lot of teams. They're another team that there's a good-sized drop-off with the guys they have first and second on their depth chart.
All right. So Baltimore takes it. Pittsburgh's a close second. Let's talk about Pittsburgh before we jump into the other two teams in the division. A lot has been talked about, they got Ben back this year. What I've noticed with Roethlisberger the last few years is, one, he hasn't exactly been a guy you can count on to stay on the field. He's had a lot of injuries, as older quarterbacks do. He's a big quarterback, so he's not the most mobile as far as evading the rush. He'll take the hits and break the tackles, but those are starting to accumulate in the injuries. So let's look behind him. Of course, same backups are there. They added Josh Dobbs again.
Josh Dobbs is back. Yeah.
Josh Dobbs is back in the building. So all of the guys that they drafted as backups are back. Okay, so
yeah, they put Devlin Hodges on the practice squad.
Yeah. So they've still got all those guys in house. It's not like they added a ton of big faces to the QB room. The QB room is the same as last year. Wide receiver room. Okay, we know it's about Juju. He's got to prove he's the number one now. Okay, on the other side now, where are we going with this? Because everybody believed it was going to be James Washington as the number 2, but they did draft Chase Claypool from Notre Dame. So is he number 2, and does Washington move to the slot? Okay, because to me, when you look at the Steelers' passing game, they didn't light it up before Ben got hurt last year. All right, And when he did finally get hurt in the Seattle game and it took him out, if it wasn't for running the ball, and we already know James Conner is not going to last a full season. So at this point, when it comes to Pittsburgh, can they stay healthy enough to compete with Baltimore for that division? Because I don't think they can.
I think they'll be healthier than they were. I think partly because of more, you guys use a basketball term, load management. So you asked if James Washington would be a number 2 or move to the slot. The answer is yes. Where was Juju when he killed it as a number 2? The slot. This is what's going to help James Washington become a really strong number 2, is playing in the slot. So by having Claypool play some Z, I think he and Deontay Johnson are going to share some time at Z. I think Johnson and Washington will see time in the slot. But Washington is one of those guys who he's only about 5'11 3/4, but very long arms, strong hands. Mm-hmm. He's going to have a breakout season. And Deontay Johnson's going to play well. And Claypool is one of those guys. He's kind of a one-trick pony, but it's a pretty good trick. He's basically he's sort of a poor man's Julio Jones. I mean, he's a big, powerful receiver. He's not great at everything, but he doesn't have to be. He's a guy that's going to be basically almost a tight end body with 4.4, low 4.4 speed. I mean, you can run 4.42 and you're 238 pounds. You've got to find a way to use that. And the red zone is very going to see that. And also, he's going to take off some just straight up go routes and they'll throw the ball up to him. So even though he's probably going to be 4th in targets, I think he might be 2nd or 3rd, probably 2nd even in touchdowns. He's probably going to have 7 touchdowns, even if he only catches 28 balls.
All right, Keith.
I mean, yeah, we're kind of at this point of a changing of the guard in the NFL, where you have your old guys like the Breezes, the Roethlisbergers, and the Bradys who still have opportunities to be really good. But if either of those quarterbacks gets hurt, maybe with the exception of Drew Brees, because they do have Taysom Hill and David Winston as their backup. But if Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger get hurt, that is huge trouble for either of those teams. Even though Ben has had his issues as of late with injury, he often does play through injury as well. That gets a little bit more hairy when you're older. You can't just walk it off like you did when you were 32, when you were pushing 40. But maybe he toughened up in the year off that he had, or found some family youth. It's tough to be seen, but if there's one thing that's undefeated in all sports, it's Father Time, and Father Time's knocking on that door for sure.
All right. Well, we did touch up on Cleveland. We'll leave Cincinnati alone because they're the rebuilding project. All right. So we're gonna let Joe Burrow hopefully make it through this season before we really get heavy in the conversation about Burrow and the Bengals.
The one thing I will say about Cincinnati, the guy that may end up number 2 in the NFL to McCaffrey in total touches and total yards from scrimmage might be Joe Mixon. Yeah. Watch him to go for about 1,170 rushing yards, and then 800 and something to 900 yards in pass receiving.
They're gonna need them. But staying in that same state, the Browns. Okay, so we know everything they have on offense. We know they got Myles Garrett. Their defense, all right, new defensive coordinator. Not to mention they've already had injuries. They drafted Grant Delpit, gone for the season.
Yep.
All right. So is Cleveland's defense good enough for them to match up with the other 2 top teams in the division? Because that's going to be one of the things they're going to need. You're going to need a defense to stop Pittsburgh. You're going to need a defense to stop Lamar. And yeah, they came out last year and they hit the Ravens in the face early. But once Lamar got it going later in the season, it was see you later. So can Cleveland's defense keep up with the rest of the division to keep them in the race?
I'm going to say no. I don't think they have the depth to – I mean, their defense isn't something that blows your socks off to begin with. Not that they're terrible, but you don't think of this defense and say potentially all-time great defense. That's not even in the same sentence. We'll see how Myles Garrett behaves this season, if he's going to be swinging helmets at people or not. Losing Delpit was probably the shot in the leg for the defense. They were not even able to get off the ground before the season started. Then you throw into account that you don't have a preseason for the defense to try to mesh together. And I don't think they're going to be terrible, but considering some of the players they'll be going up against, I wouldn't put much faith in it.
Okay, Bill.
I think Myles Garrett plays at an all-pro level. I think he's going to be in the top 3 in sacks. 15 to 16 and a half, I think, is the over/under. He's going to have a big year. I think that they still have some good pieces, but cohesion, right? We just talked about that with the way this year is. That'll be a bit of an issue. And yes, depth. I'm not wild about their linebacker core. And they don't have at least 1 or 2 linebackers that are solid, but once again, there's a big drop off between the starters and the second stringers. I like some of the pieces, even without Delpit. They have some pieces in their secondary that I like. But once again, you need at least 3 or 4 starting level corners to have a good defense nowadays. And they have really 2 starting level corners. There's a big drop off. And then obviously with Delpit out, they're going to be kind of patching it together in the back end. Ronnie Harrison is not a bad player, but there's a reason that he was available to be traded. I mean, it wasn't like they were like, if you say I'm willing to give you a 5th, and they're like, yeah, we'll do it. That tells you everything you need to know. I mean, that's not. I mean, he's not going to be what Grant Delpit would have been, and he's really more comfortable coming forward than going back. And we now play in an NFL, which is fine, in the David Fulcher days, but we now play in an NFL where you want safeties that are very comfortable going backwards and side to side and not just coming downhill. So they're going to give up some big plays in the passing game, but they're going to be pretty good against the run. If you're looking for like one thing to hang your hat on, the Browns are going to be a good defense against the run.
All right. So with that being said, gentlemen, it's time to throw up the 4s because it is time for our 4th quarter. That's right, 4th quarter. Here we go. All right, so we're going to close this show out with the 4th quarter. We got to close it out right. So no more divisional talk. Let's talk my backyard. Super Bowl, Tampa Bay. Who do you have playing in that game? All right. Bill, start us off.
Sure. I have a team that I think not many people are talking about coming out of the NFC side, and that's the Packers. Now, I know it's popular to sort of disregard the Packers going 13-3 last year. I don't know how you disregard a team going 13-3 with their first year in a new system on offense. But Aaron Rodgers is not going to be his second year in that system. And everyone keeps talking about how they didn't get him this, they didn't get him that. It went 13-3 before. If they have a little more health and another year in the same system, the offense is going to be better. The only question I really had is their defense. And I think the defense is going to be just enough better. Not a lot better, not mind-boggling, but just enough better that I think they're going to go on a run to the playoffs. They're probably going to be one game less in the regular season. I think they're going to go 12-4 as opposed to 13-3. But they're going to not have that stumble in the playoffs that they had last year. I think they're going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. And on the AFC side, I've been going back and forth between the Chiefs and the Ravens. I've been going back and forth, and I'm just going to go back to the Chiefs, which feels, I don't know, I just feel wrong because it's so hard to repeat, but I think they're going to manage to do it. Well, repeat as in make it back. I think the old lion may overcome the young lion. This has been the hardest thing for me to do is I've been sort of drawing up scenarios and sort of walking through, what has to happen for the Packers to overcome the Chiefs. I believe they're going to do a lot of unusual things on defense, even structurally unsound things on defense. Because as talented as Pat Mahomes is, he can sometimes still be fooled. Of course, we saw the first time he looked great when he was taking his team, on a run, which almost got him to the Super Bowl. We saw a few times that Belichick was able to confuse him. Now he's more experienced now, but you have to be willing to really do some unusual things that might not work and might blow up in your face. If you aren't a gambler, if you aren't gutsy on defense, you're just going to end up being killed anyway, right? So you can't play conservatively. That's been proven not to work against Mahomes. You have to bring disguised pressures. You've got to do things where you're going to sometimes just pick a guy and leave him open, right? And just hope he doesn't find that guy in time. You're going to do some things that just make you nervous. You have to go zero coverage sometimes. You're going to do some really scary things on defense. And if they have the guts, and that's the question, if they have the guts to do things they haven't done on defense and that they don't like to do on defense, you have a chance. And then Aaron Rodgers will have to basically be the best he's ever been. But I think he's got one more in him. I really believe Aaron Rodgers has been spending all of his time since they got ousted from the playoffs last year studying all the things that went wrong. And then, of course, they drafted a quarterback, which, not that he needed that little word in Spanish is fujita, which means poker, right? I don't know if he needed that, but now he has that. The team's letting him know, we don't know if you have it anymore. Well, that was, that's put him, I think it puts him over the edge. I think he's going to have a great year. And he's going to carry that team sometimes. But I think the defense will have to come up with some plays. They'll have to get a strip sack somewhere in there. They're going to have to get – and they do have a good pass rush. I think people forget how good the Packers' pass rush is. And they're going to have to get some plays in the back end. They're going to have to get a turnover or two either by knocking the ball away from a receiver who's catching it or getting a tip ball interception. But I think if they can get to 3 turnovers, which is hard, but they can do that, I think they win it.
All right, Keith, your turn.
Oh, well, we'll start with the similars. I have the Chiefs coming out of AFC as well, which just feels dirty, disgusting picking a rival team from my division of the Broncos. But game, the Chiefs are just that good. They didn't really get worse. If anything, they may have gotten a little bit better in the offseason. Defense might be a bit of an issue, but that offense is just such a well-oiled machine that, it just takes a terrible day from Pat Mahomes to beat that team and slow down that offense, and it doesn't happen very often. The Ravens will be right there as well. I think it's kind of a 2-dog race in that division or in that league, the AFC. It'll come down to the Chiefs and Ravens, but I think the Chiefs just have that edge because they have that just superstar quarterback, which is not taking anything away from Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a superstar quarterback as well. But when it comes down to it, who throws the best in the playoffs, it's going to be Pat Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. As far as the NFC, I boiled myself down to 3 teams. Like Bill, I have my eye on the Packers just because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and they are going to have another year or a year under their belt in that system. You can't ignore the 49ers. They didn't lose a whole lot in their team this year either. Raheem Mostert is coming back. Tevin Campbell is coming back. They did lose Emmanuel Sanders. That's going to hurt them a little. But they definitely have to be in the conversation. And again, being sick to my stomach, I just cannot get the Dallas Cowboys out of my head. I wish that team no more championships under Jerry Jones, but they had an absolute hell of an offseason. drafting CeeDee Lamb first. Look at what they have on their depth chart on their front seven with Jalen Smith, Alden Smith, Gregory might be playing. We'll see. And just everyone that was there last year as well. Vander Esch is going to be coming back playing linebacker. And they are just absolutely loaded on the offensive side of the ball. Ezekiel Elliott, Mari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Unless Dak Prescott is the most awful quarterback in the history of the NFL, I don't see how that team cannot just win based on talent alone on a lot of games. Throw in the fact that the bad man Jason Garrett is gone. Mike McCarthy brings some championship DNA to that team. As much as I hate to say it, I think the Cowboys are going to come out of the NFC and go to Super. This is their year. I never believe it is their year. When I was a Cowboys fan, I never believed it was their year. But I think this is the year that they finally make it to the Super Bowl. I'm not ready to say that they're going to win it yet.
All right. Well, every one of us in Nuts and Bolts Sports has been putting together a quick video talking about who we think is going to make it. Very similar to you guys. Of course, I had Kansas City going back. I just think that right now they're going to run that conference for a little while until Baltimore shows they can knock them off. I don't think Buffalo has anything to match them. I think the teams in their division are going to give them a fight. But at the end of the day, I think Kansas City is going to be the class of the AFC for a while. Now, as far as the NFC, all right, I don't think the Niners are going back. I think they had a great year last year. Don't get me wrong. I think that overall they did add some pieces to be competitive. Overall, I don't even think they're going to be the best team in their division. I think there's going to be so much competition, and I'm not even talking about Arizona. I know everybody's on the Arizona hype train right now. I think San Francisco is going to have to fight through the NFC West.
Seattle, baby. Watch out for Seattle, baby.
You could out of it. They were inches away from San Francisco last year. So, Seattle's always in the conversation. So the West is not even sure. Now, I know Aaron Rodgers wants to basically put his stamp on the team and say, you guys are a little premature. My days aren't over yet. But we seem to be having some audio. Okay. I'm going to say this. Okay. The one problem I have with Green Bay was that last year, no matter how good Aaron Rodgers was, that offense was inconsistent for many different reasons. Okay. He was not a happy man, which is one reason why they drafted the quarterbacks that they drafted. All right. So if they do not come out the first 4 games, especially on offense, and look in sync, moving the ball up and down the field and putting up points, he's going to be a frustrated man. And it's going to turn into a long season in Green Bay, because you can see last year that he and his head coach, Matt LaFleur, were not on the same page at all. Okay. So if they come out and struggle in the first 4 games, I do think there's going to be a point where, yes, there's going to be a bit of a mutiny on the bounty going on there in Green Bay. Now, as far as my pick from the NFC, however, it is not because I have been a fan of that team since 1979. It's because, plain and simple, despite the fact they've changed head coaches, despite the fact they've added a lot of pieces in the offseason, they still have the same I'm not sorry where that came from, but so besides the fact they have the same offensive coordinator, I believe the Dallas Cowboys will be the representative from the NFC. It's just the fact of the matter is, I think they have the pieces on offense to put up the points week in and week out if they struggling with certain things. I believe that running game is going to be there. The receivers are going to give them matchups they need. I think that the new direction of the locker room is going to help. So overall, I picked that team to finally overcome their demons and get to the big game. All right. So with that being said, and time is ticking down on us. All right. So it is time now to say who won, who took it all, and no Michael Buffer this week. Michael Buffer, I gave him the night off. It's football time. And there's nobody else to send to the back. So the good thing is there's only one person gets sent to the back. And that person's Keith, because Keith, it is the football savant that won tonight. Mr. Bill Carroll joins the winner's circle. So Keith's going to the back right now. And Bill, you have the floor. 3 minutes of FaceTime. Say what you want. It is yours. You earned it.
Sure. I'm happy about a lot of things. First of all, like I said, football being back. But there are 32 NFL football teams. And there is one general manager who's a black man. That's Chris Greer. And then with Jason Wright, who I remember scouting as a player in his days at Northwestern, is now the CEO, the president of the Washington football team. I mean, when you do the math, it tells you something very quickly. One GM out of 32, and of course, one team president. It is clear to me that there is a disconnect between how the NFL sees talent as players and evaluates talent as players, because you have a league that's almost 70% black in terms of players. And there's even a good number of assistant coaches. It thins out once you get to the head coaching ranks. But they have a good idea of how to find and identify that talent. Clearly, there is a problem with the way the NFL finds and identifies talent moving on in the front office area. Now, recently, they've given a space in the NFL Hall of Fame to the Black College Hall of Fame. And part of that, there's also an internship program. One of it is on the sports media side, but they also have one on the sports business side. My hope is that by using these interns that come from HBCUs and giving them opportunities to get entry-level positions with NFL teams, you'll start to see them finally putting together a way of identifying and grooming talent, because it is inconceivable that there should be 32 NFL teams with one black GM and one black team president. There's something very wrong with that. And I'm hoping, like I said, that this recent linkage they've made with the Black College Hall of Fame and some HBCU internship programs will fix that problem.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I think that's one thing that has to change. We're talking about society and law enforcement needs to change this and that, but we talk about sports as the great escape, but you can't escape it when you look at sports. You look at the head coaches, most of the time, okay, the head coach is speaking. You don't expect a black person to be sitting in that chair, and for the most part, you don't have it. It was funny. I was looking at something that mentioned the Hall of Fame, and they mentioned the Black College Hall of Fame. And I was just looking at the comments because I had a feeling there was going to be at least one in there that goes, "Why is there a Black College Hall of Fame?" and I laughed. And for those that don't understand, if you watch the show now or later, why there's a Black College Hall of Fame. Well, let's look at it this way. We talk about the winningest head coaches of all time. And everybody says, oh, Bear Bryant, Joe Paterno. But the guy that had more wins than both of them was my former coach and mentor, Eddie Robinson. But Eddie Robinson is not going to be mentioned because the first thing they say is major college football, so they can exclude Eddie Robinson and say Joe Paterno and Bear Bryant. But the fact of the matter is, and it wasn't until Eddie Robinson got surpassed by the coach at St. John's for wins.
Coach Gagliardi, yeah.
Yes, all right. Then all of a sudden they started to mention Eddie again. Coach Rob, excuse me. He shunned me for saying Eddie. So Coach Rob again. But the fact of the matter is, it's that kind of thing. When it comes down to it, black head coaches, whether they're past or present, in college football, in pro football. We don't mention a lot of things about Art Shell, what he did, but Art Shell was a pretty good head coach with the Oakland Raiders for many years. Had them on the cusp of a Super Bowl a couple of times. You know, we don't mention Tom Flores actually winning a Super Bowl with the Raiders as a minority coach. Yes, too. Yes. So it's those things that we talk about. That's why these things exist, because there are a lot of players, there are a lot of coaches from HBCUs who don't ever get mentioned with the guys from Nebraska, Oklahoma, UCLA, USC, Notre Dame. So yes, that is why those things exist. Yes, that's exact. Yes, just like this, why there's a BET, because yes, we have to have something that shows black people other than as criminals and as athletes. Yes, that's true. We do.
Conversely, though, if I could just squeeze in super quick, I 100% agree that there needs to be more representation in all sports of minorities, not just black, but blacks, Hispanics, women. Becky Hammond's considered one of the top candidates for an NBA coaching job.
Yep.
We also have to sometimes not go far, and every single time a white coach gets hired, say it's white privilege. Mainly, I'm talking about when Steve Nash was hired as the coach of the Nets. It's easy to say it's white privilege, but when you factor in the relationship that he has with Kevin Durant, the basketball mind that he has, if the team is trying to go in a different direction, sometimes, to put it bluntly, the white coach is the better coach, and sometimes that's just the way it is.
I understand that wholeheartedly, and we've seen it a few times with a couple of different things. I think it's your background, Bill. Hold on. Yeah, it seems to be busy out there in the Midwest there, Bill. So I understand exactly what you mean. I know a lot of people, look at certain positions. I'll tell you what, to this day, I don't understand what was so quick about the Jets hiring Adam Gase. I never understood that, but I guarantee you there were 4 other guys that were qualified for that position that deserved a little more consideration than they did, and they didn't get looked at.
Like the new coach of the New York Giants. I don't even remember his name. That's how irrelevant he was.
Joe Judge.
What was his name?
Joe Judge.
Yeah, you can't tell me there was not at least 1 or 20 minority candidates that were not better than him.
Well, I'll tell you what, as one of the coaches that's joined the newly formed Minority Coaching Football Coalition, that is one of the things that's being pushed for, and that's what we're banding together for. Because one thing as a minority coach you face is, yes, you have to deal with the large scale of candidates for jobs, but you have to also deal with other things from you're not inside of a network that person is in.
That's called the old boys club.
Or just good old-fashioned nepotism. Because plain and simple, there's some guys, as long as you have a certain name and your daddy was such and such, you're going to get an opportunity because your daddy was such and such. There are plenty of guys that fight for these internships to get in to places, but you know what? Wade Phillips' son Wes didn't have to fight as hard as some of these guys got, because plain and simple, his daddy brought him into his organization while he was coaching.
Yeah, Steve Belichick is a good coach, but you can't tell me that he didn't. I'm pretty sure his interview was not the hardest interview in the world when he showed up to the Patriots. Here's the last thing I'll say about this. This is why it's so important that you get people like Jason Wright, like Chris Greer, and more of them. And as someone mentioned, I mean, look at all of college football, right? In all of college football, in the history of college football, at the FBS level, we've had 3 Asian or Pacific Islander coaches. 2 of them are coaching now. Norm Chow's retired. 3 in the history, right? So there's clearly something wrong there. I mean, Ken Niumatalolo and now Kalani Sitake are both having success, you would think the success would make other people say, hey, maybe. I mean, how is Robert Anai not getting a chance to be a head coach? It's mind-boggling to me how many really great Polynesian and there's a good number of really good Asian American coaches, but very few of them get interviewed for the big-time head coaching jobs for whatever reason. So it comes down to sometimes you have to change the decision makers to get better decisions, because the decision makers that have been in place clearly don't look beyond where they, once again, it's what I call the mental picture, right? Mm-hmm. Mental picture scouting, right? So it's like that. When someone has a mental picture, well, look at Cliff Kingsbury. My God, look at him. He's so handsome and cool. I mean, can you imagine a minority coach, a Hispanic, a Black, an Asian coach with the record that Cliff Kingsbury had getting an interview for an NFL job? I'd say get the job. Imagine him getting the interview. That would be a huge upset. Yeah. It is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I wholeheartedly get it. And we can only hope and pray that so far things go a different direction. Yeah. Hope. Yeah.
Hope. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start to close this out. But once again, guys, thank you for being on. Welcome to the winner's circle, Mr. Carroll. You know, you joined the ranks. Keith, that elusive
hasn't been there yet?
No, this is his first one.
Oh, I thought he's won one already.
No, this is his first win. So you're now even with Keith. He hasn't gotten his second victory yet. So
I'll get it. I'll get it here every week. I'll get it.
Yeah, all right. Well, you're always welcome to do so. Both of you guys are welcome to do so. So I'm going to punch you guys to the back while I get ready to sign us out. All right. So with that being said, I'm closing out another week of No Huddle Necessary as the NFL season kicks off. Enjoy your opening weekend. Enjoy some more college football. If you have high school football, enjoy it, because Lord knows how long football is going to last with the area of COVID-19. And once again, thank you for watching. Until next week, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we have 3 more panelists going at it for some more FaceTime. And we'll have some more NFL news to talk about, as well as college. So stay tuned. This is Jeff Barnes, once again, signing off for No Huddle Necessary.